Hi guys, I hope you're good. I hope you're well and excited for our lesson today. Guys, if you look back at the previous two lessons that we had, we worked on exponential equations where the exponent was the unknown value. But today we're doing something quite different where the base is the unknown value now. So I'll give you the exponent and you need to find what the base is. Okay, so now grab your pen and paper and let's see how do you actually work around these values. So guys, the first part of our lesson is the introduction part of what we'll be doing today, and it first looks at specifically what we have learned so far. So we have already learned how to solve equations when the unknown value is an exponent. So we have done that in the previous two lessons where the unknown value was the exponent. And now on this lesson, we will look at some basic ways to solve an equation in the presence of an exponent. So we will give you an exponential value. So this time it will be a known value, okay? So it will be a known value, but the base will be the unknown value. So this means you will have problems in this form where you have x to the power of 2. Now the base is unknown, the exponent is known. While on the previous lessons, you had values like 2 to the power of x, where now the exponent was the unknown value. So we will be doing things a bit different this time, okay? So this is our first example. Say solve for x if x squared equals 4. So if x squared is equal to 4, let's solve for x in that case. So guys, there are two ways in which you can do this, but the one that I will be teaching you based on exponents is how to remove the squared value that you see there. That 2, how do you get rid of that 2 there? So this is how you do it. If you're given x squared equals 4, to remove that value there, you introduce a square root. So we need to introduce a square root. So I will simply say this is the square root. And remember, what you do on your left, you need to always do on your right. So the square root, the actual value of the square root is, if you have x to the power, or the square root of x, it simply means you have x to the power of 1 over 2. So the reason why you see those square roots, cube roots, or anything, it means the power there is a fraction, okay? So that is why we need to bring up a square root both sides. Remember, mathematical laws say if you do something on your left, you need to ensure that you repeat the same thing on your right. So that is why here I have a square root on my left and a square root on my right, and therefore this will be x, because the square root sign cancels that squared. So it means I had a situation where I have x squared and I introduced the 1 over 2. So it simply means you have x to the power of 2 over 2, which is x to the power of 1, which you simply write x. So that is why I said x equals, what is the square root of 4? The square root of 4 is 2. So you can use a calculator to find square roots. If you're not allowed, you need to understand your perfect squares very well. Example number 2. So the second example now, it's a bit tricky from the first one, because the first one, you had already been given a value saying x squared equals to 4. But now you have b to the power of 3 minus 8 equals 0. So what do you do in such a case? So if you have such a case, since it's 0, you need to ensure that your unknown value remains alone on one side and your constant goes to the other side. So in this case, the constant is 8. So if you have a negative 8, the moment it jumps the equal sign, it becomes a positive 8. And if you have 3 as a power, so it means you are not going to introduce a square root this time, you are introducing a cube root. So this will be the cube root and a cube root on the other side. So it means therefore b is given by 2. The cube root of 8 is 2 because 2 times 2 times 2 will give you 8. So that is why 2 is a cube root of 8. So guys, as I'm going to repeat this, sometimes you will be allowed to use calculators and sometimes you won't be allowed to use calculators. So you need to understand your square roots, your cube roots, okay? You need to get those very well. Last equation, that is for you. Do it now and then come back and see if you got the right answers. So, worked example number 3 says solve for the unknown base a, and because I trust you, I already know that you got the right answer. But let's see if every step was followed. Now you have a squared minus 5 equals 44. So that is a beautiful equation, and let's see how do we do it. So the first thing that you need to do here is ensure that you add like terms together. So you group like terms on one side. So now you will have a to the power of 2 equals 44 plus 5. Because if you have a negative 5 there, when it jumps the equal sign, it changes that sign, so it must be a plus. Now you have a squared equals 49. And since you have an exponent 2 there, so it means you can definitely introduce the square root. So guys, the reason why you always see the square root alone there is because it always has a 2 there, okay? But you don't write the 2 unless it's any number bigger than 2, like a cube root or fifth root or any other root. But only the square root, we don't write the 2 there. So you say the square root of a will be, the square root of a squared will be a, and this equals to 7, because 7 times 7 gives you 49. So that is why the square root of 49 is given by 7. Guys, that is how you work around these values. Finding the base is quite simple more than finding the actual exponent itself, because you hardly have more than 3 steps or 4 steps here. So that's what you do. It's quite simple. If you see a squared, just introduce the square root. If you see a cube, it means you're going to introduce the cube root. As it moves like that, it doesn't change. So if you see a power of 5, so it means you bring in the fifth root. So that's how you actually find the base. So you introduce the square root or any radical that you need to use in order to simplify your values. Okay, so guys, thank you for joining me on today's lesson, and I will see you on the next one.